Matisse, the King of Color, by Lawrence Anholt. Monique climbed the steep hill and up some long steps to a huge building high above the town. The sign by the door said, Henri Matisse. It was like stepping into a multicolored jungle. Birds flew from room to room, and plants grew as tall as trees. "Hello," called a small voice. "Is that the night nurse?" "Hello, Mr. Matisse," said Monique. "I have come to look after you." The old artist had a silver beard and twinkly glasses. He was recovering from a big operation. The doctors thought he would never paint again. "I feel a little better," he said, "but I would like you to read to me." So Monique chose a book. She read for a long time. Matisse didn't sleep, but Monique did. "Oh, I'm sorry," she said. "This is my very first job." Matisse just smiled. "Look, I made a drawing of you." Then Matisse told her about his adventures in different lands, diving in tropical lagoons and rowing on blue-green seas. And soon Monique forgot it was night outside. Matisse loved music. Matisse loved flowers. Matisse loved children, too. He tied chalk to a long stick so that he could draw his grandchildren on the ceiling. "They keep me company when I can't sleep," he said. But the thing Matisse loved most of all was color. He was always trying to find ways to make his paintings brighter and brighter. Some people called him the wild beast because his colors were so crazy. Every evening, Monique climbed the hill to the jungle studio. Monique helped Matisse to sit up and paint, and they became good friends. Matisse made lots of pictures of Monique in a beautiful silk dress. With a mandolin on a chair, and all his work was full of joy. "There's enough sadness in the world," he would say. "Look how much better I am," said Matisse one day. "It's like having a new life. Thank you for looking after me, Monique." "You have been like a grandfather to me," said Monique. Then Monique picked up her bag and walked slowly out of the jungle room. She thought she would never see Matisse again. Monique went to school far away in the mountains. But it was not an ordinary school. Everybody dressed in black and white. There were no colors at all. Monique's school was a school for nuns. Life was very hard, and the nuns were so poor they didn't even have a proper chapel. They had to say their prayers in a cold and leaky garage. When the old nuns heard that Monique had been a nurse, they gave her a bicycle and sent her to look after people who weren't well. Every day Monique cycled along the lane, past a big empty house. The house had views right across the mountains to the sea. It was called the Dream. One afternoon in June, Monique saw that a new owner was moving into the Dream. The new owner loved birds. The new owner loved cats. The new owner was Henri Matisse. Matisse was delighted to see Monique again. "You are all black and white," he teased, "but I have found a way to be more colorful than ever. Look, I'll show you. First I put on some music. Jazz is the best. Now I shall paint some big sheets of paper, as bright as I can." Then, with hands as quick as butterflies, Matisse cut 100 dancing shapes, and soon they were pinned up on every wall of the Dream. "I've been painting too," said Monique shyly. She showed Matisse a tiny picture. It was a design for a stained glass window. "We could have this made with real stained glass as high as this room," said Matisse, but Monique laughed. "The nuns don't even have a chapel. You can't put stained glass windows in a garage." It was nearly dark when Monique ran home. The nuns would be worried, and look, Monique was covered in splashes of color. "Come back soon," laughed Matisse. Late into the night, the lights burned at the Dream. Matisse was working on an idea. The next time Monique called, she found Matisse very excited. Monique, you have been so kind to me. This is my idea. I'm going to build a chapel up here in the mountains, not a dark, gloomy church. My chapel will be a house of color. It will be my present for you. Matisse asked Monique to build a model like a big doll's house. Now all I have to do is fill your box with my imagination. Matisse made wonderful drawings for the chapel walls. He even designed some colorful robes for the priests to wear. We do not want a chapel built by a wild beast, grumbled the old nuns. The chapel took a very long time. Matisse became tired. He asked the carpenter to put wheels on a bed and a tray for his paints. Matisse called it his taxi. At last the workmen began to put up the chapel walls. Their bangs and shouts echoed through the mountains. The chapel had a bright blue roof and a golden bell on a curly tower. This will be more like a circus than a chapel, said the old nuns. One gray day, when everything was nearly finished, Monique pushed Matisse along the lane to look inside. Monique was surprised. Everything seemed to be shiny white. It didn't look like a house of color at all. Perhaps the nuns had won. The chapel was black and white, just like their clothes. But the king of color had one more trick to play. He had been working away in the studio designing windows for the chapel, using colored paper to cut out blue and green shapes of colored light. 17 stained glass windows were made in a factory exactly as Matisse had planned. A big truck climbed slowly up the mountains, and the workmen lifted them carefully into place. Then they drove back down the mountain, and the chapel was finished. Monique got up early. It was her turn to wake the others, and today was a very special day. It was the opening of the Matisse chapel. There would be lots of visitors, and Monique wanted everything to be ready. She crept outside. The chapel was dark and quiet. Then something amazing happened. Monique felt as if she was floating in a multicolored sea. Matisse was painting with light. The morning sun rose over the mountains, and a bright ray of sunlight fell across the darkened windows. Very slowly, the room began to fill with colored light. It crept across the floor and onto the white walls. Then, just like magic painting, the black and white world filled with beautiful colors. Monique stood for a moment. Then she went to wake the others. High on a blue roof, the golden bell began to chime. It echoed across the mountains to the sea. As the sunlight filled his bedroom, Matisse heard the sound, and he smiled. "Now I can rest," said the king of color.
Henri Matisse, 1869 to 1954, discovered painting in his 20s while recovering from an illness. Within 2 years, he had given up on his job, a lawyer, and devoted his life to color, pattern, and relentless quest for simplicity. Matisse and his followers became known as La Fauves, the wild beasts, although people who met the artist were surprised to discover a polite and highly disciplined gentleman who adored birds and cats. Discerning patrons began to commission paintings such as Dance, 1920, and Matisse became as famous and successful as his friend and rival Picasso. Matisse settled in Nice, but he loved to travel. Visiting Tahiti and Morocco, where the strong colors made a profound impression on him. In 1941, Matisse developed severe abdominal cancer, and a series of operations left him unable to stand in front of an easel. A young trainee nurse, Monique Bourgeois, was given the job of keeping him company during the long nights, and he suffered from insomnia through his life. A delightful friendship grew between the frail artist who desperately missed his beloved grandchildren and Monique, who had recently lost her father. Matisse invited Monique to sit for a series of paintings, including La Idole, 1942. In the early 1940s, Matisse was appalled to hear that his estranged wife, Amélie, and beloved daughter, Marguerite, both resistance workers, had suffered terribly at the hands of the Gestapo. In spite of these horrors, Matisse never faltered from his journey into ever more vibrant use of color. He explored ways of working freely from a bed or a wheelchair using bamboo poles tipped with chalk and a childlike technique of drawing with scissors. His recovery was so remarkable that his nurses nicknamed him Le Ressuscité, the man who rose from the dead. Then, to Matisse's dismay, Monique decided to become a Dominican nun and moved away from Nice. Matisse moved to the safety of the mountains in the Villa Le Rêve, the Dream, which became his home and studio for 6 years. A part of France colonized by artists including Chagall, Renoir, Miro, Bonnard, and Picasso, who often visited Matisse. By coincidence, Monique, now sister of Jacques Marie, had moved into a tiny nunnery not 500 feet from Matisse's door. Their friendship was quickly re-established, but was now considerably restricted. Monique was not allowed to accept so much as a glass of water outside the nunnery. Matisse worried about her having to cycle mile after mile as a nursing nun. He managed to give her a small motor for her bicycle. This period of Matisse's work, known as the Second Life, gave rise to some of the most inventive and colorful works in the history of art. His energy and inventions would have been remarkable in a healthy young artist, but for an invalid in his 80s, it was astonishing. Inspiration, love of life, pure stubbornness kept him going. Matisse considered the Chapelle des Roseraires outside Vence to be his greatest achievement. It was built as a gift to Monique and the nuns who had looked after him. He was helped in his ambitious project by a dedicated team, but he credited Monique as his principal co-worker. Sister Jacques Marie Monique died in October 2005 at the age of 84. The best time to visit the small but exquisite Chapelle des Roseraires is early on an autumn morning when the sunlight falls across the huge stained glass windows and floods the interior with colored light.